we've been up to on the shared coalition level this year. And once again, kind of ground us in starting last year, we went into 2021 knowing it was the 50th anniversary of the Oregon Recreational Trails System Act, and that was gonna kind of be a guiding light or frame for our work during 2021. So in 2020, in partnership with Trail Keepers of Oregon and the Oregon Mountain Bike Coalition, we launched the Trail Stewardship Coordination Work Group. Originally, it was a conversation for groups to come together to talk about how they were responding to new information about COVID, to try to get volunteers back out working on trails in a safe way as soon as possible. But that stewardship coordination work group, I feel like, has become just a foundational part of what the coalition does. And these are some of the partners who've been engaged often throughout the year. And you're welcome to engage with this group in the future if you haven't yet. But that group, along with being kind of a usually monthly meeting and just brain trust for sharing questions and challenges and successes, has taken on a number of projects. We published our Oregon Trail Stewardship Map, which I believe has more than 80 entries on it now for either different organizations or different chapters, or just kind of maybe different major project sites for organizations where they're doing trail stewardship. So now we have this statewide resource that non kind of trail stewardship group partners can share. So our tourism partners or our other community partners can share this as an opportunity for how folks can connect with anyone, with a group doing trail work in their region or in a region where they like to travel. Also, the Trail Stewardship Coordination Work Group, with support from the Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Forest Service, and in partnership with Clackamas Community College, launched a new backcountry first aid and CPR program to meet the big gap in programming available during COVID, but also to provide kind of first aid CPR in a trail specific context. And we've now had more than 120 people complete the program this year and are scheduling more sessions around the state now for 2021. So get in touch if you're just learning about this program now and you are a volunteer who needs first aid CPR training in order to crew lead or get Sawyer certification, or if you have anyone else who does. Another big project that's been mentioned already, but that we were thrilled to share with the world this year, is our Ready, Set, Plan Introductory Guide to Trail Planning and Development. We published this year with support from the Bureau of Land Management and Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, and with fabulous graphic design of Ashley Schaefer from Empowering Access. And thanks to the guidance and support and content sharing of many partners on this call, to create a guide for advocates and for field staff to kind of understand how to navigate the planning process. We also want to give a shout out to another big resource developed this year by the 40 Mile Loop and Jim Shulin, which we are hosting on the Oregon Trails Coalition website. And it is a matrix of government funding sources for trails that you can access on the coalition. You can find it through our blog or the planning page. And this can help folks navigate all the different funding sources that are there. And Jim is continuing to keep this updated, at least for the year. And then we might be looking for other volunteers who want to help maintain this resource. We had our 2021 webinar series with our funding opportunities webinar, legislative updates, webinar on successful regional trails collaboratives, introduction to our trail planning guide. You can find all of these on the Coalition blog if you missed them, and we'll start our webinar series up again in early 2022. We wrapped up our Oregon Outdoor Recreation Summit and Trail Summit in late October. 340 people registered for this year's summit. More than 80 people participated in summit-related trail stewardship events led by Trail Keepers of Oregon and Central Oregon Trail Alliance. And all of our summit virtual sessions are now available on the Oregon Trails Coalition YouTube channel. So we would love for folks to access that. So much great content was offered from folks around the state this year. So big gratitude to all of the folks who helped get that content out to the rest of your community. Now I'm gonna dive in a little bit to the more text heavy slides here to really do our legislative debrief. As a growing, kind of still a young growing coalition, we have yet to really carry any bills as kind of the primary bill writer or sponsor, but we've definitely been doing some great work across coalitions and partnerships to support legislation that is good for trails and trails access and protecting our public lands and investing in our parks and lands where we need that investment for trails. So the bills listed here are all bills that the Oregon Trails Coalition endorsed, submitted testimony on, was active in supporting. And on the left side here, we have all of the bills that were passed this session. The governor's omnibus recreation bill, which both kind of reasserted the importance of our statewide Office of Outdoor Recreation. It reinstated the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund, operated through the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, which is put matching funds from the legislature into the pot for the private funds being developed as part of that fund, and that has funded some trails construction and planning processes along with other conservation and recreation measures. The Waterways Access bill was passed and signed. That's primarily an information sharing bill for the State Marine Board to share, to kind of catalog and share information about ways to access our water trails and waterways. The Search and Rescue Fund bill was established to create a voluntary search and rescue fund that can supplement counties' search and rescue funds for costs to support those programs. There is a bill passed responding to bias crimes in the outdoors that was forwarded by the governor's task force on racial equity in the outdoors, and that has been signed and passed. And then bills that we worked on that we were disappointed did not see pass in the 2021 session included an increase in the percentage of transportation funding going to bike and pedestrian facilities. So that would have been good for trails that exist within the public road right-of-way or where safety crossing improvements are needed for trails in the road right-of-way. And also the bill to invest in the Oregon Coast Trail. Both those bills stalled out, so they weren't voted against, but they didn't make it through the legislature this year. And for federal trails advocacy, in addition to every year, the coalition submits budget appropriations requests to our senators But this year we did a lot of work around the recreational trails program, which we don't have a success to report on that program specifically this year, although I'm calling it a success that Congressman Blumenauer in his opening remarks for our meeting named that program specifically as a priority. So hopefully we'll keep working on that one with some champions and the Oregon congressional delegation. But in the infrastructure bill that is now signed into law, there's authorization of the active transportation connectivity grants that Congressman Blumenauer mentioned, and a 70% increase in transportation alternatives funding. So this fund is in part what funds the Oregon Community Paths program, as well as some of those dollars are also programmed on the regional level for primarily paved multi-use trails, or trails that serve as both recreation and transportation corridors. So a good sign for those kinds of trails. And then the Build Back Better bill, or reconciliation package, which has passed the House but is still in play in the Senate, and we don't know exactly where it'll land or what will be in the final bill. I just wanted to share kind of briefly, there's a lot of potential opportunities for trails in this bill. We don't know kind of what the amounts will be in the final bill, or where it will land. But there's some of the, on this first page are some of the things that we heard Congressman Blumenauer reference in his opening remarks about urban parks and national heritage areas, the neighborhood access and equity grants. That grant program specifically does explicitly names multi-use trails and greenways as part of the investment priority. Also land corps funding, which are corps such as Northwest Youth Corps, as an example, do a lot of work on trails and other priorities. Also in that bill is there's a lot of things under the ecological restoration heading, including restoring and improving recreation sites on federal lands, providing grants to states and tribes for ecosystem restoration. So there's kind of the ecological restoration category and a wildland fire risk reduction heading as well that includes post-fire restoration activities. So we try to look at the big picture of everything that is, not just good for trails specifically, but also kind of our public lands broadly. But we think there are some specific opportunities for trails, and so we're going to continue to watch that. Also, just wanted to call out some local regional partner advocacy among coalition partners this year. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, but saw a lot of advocacy this year from Friends of the Yamhalis West Sider Trail as they worked for avenues to continue keeping that project moving forward despite a lack of support from their 3-member board of commissioners. There is a champion on that board, but a lot of community support for that project. A lot of work both from staff like Paul inside OPRD to keep the Oregon Coast Trail Action Plan moving forward, as well as advocates continuing to advocate for that on the outside. Council Creek, Washington County applied for a RAISE grant for the Council Creek Regional Trail. CODA has done lots of work on supporting the Lemon Gulch Trail system along with other members of Ochoco Trails. And we've been also working with partners on implementation of the Metro Parks and Nature Bond, as well as their new regional flex funds process. So this is just a little bit of a list and just a reminder and an invitation to all of you. If your organization is working on advocacy, or if your agency is trying to garner support for for a trail or trail systems, please reach out so we can share your efforts with the broad Trails Coalition statewide of folks who would love to share their support for your local project as well. And finally, in terms of advocacy, one big thing that comes up again and again is just the importance of sharing the value of trails to our communities more broadly, and developing and sharing those kinds of messages to create excitement about trails in general in the state. And a big focus around that this year has been the 50th anniversary of the Oregon Recreation Trails Act. And with